Welcome, everybody, back to the VHS vault for some heavy metal fun tonight. I'm here, of course, with Jason Roy Gaston.
Rock.
And why pick this film, Jace? Why this one? Why did you come to go, look, we got to talk about heavy metal?
Oh, heavy metal. Well, this is one of those movies that just seems like this weird fever dream where after you watch it and wake up the next morning, you're like, did I really just see that? Or was that some kind of weird wet dream that I just had? No, this movie exists, and it's a strange movie, and some cases a divisive movie, but you cannot argue that this thing does not have its charm, and I will say that I believe this movie has one of the scariest sequences ever put on film, and that I think that the last sequence with I've forgotten the barbarian woman's name. It'll pop up in my head here in just a minute. But the sequence with the sequence with the barbarian woman on the little fat bird. I think that would be an amazing live action adaptation if they would do it right, and I mean copy the costumes and everything. Tana, yes, Tana, yes. I love this movie. I love this movie, and don't show this one to your kids, is all I can say. It's an animation, but it ain't no cartoon. Don't show it to your kids.
No, don't show it to your 8-year-old little brother, which happened to me. And I remember being a very visceral experience, besides the obvious, of the film. And I remember enjoying it, but you know what? I hadn't gone back to the film since then. So I've literally just finished watching it. And my reaction to it is that, it's a movie made for college kids. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, they've been able to manufacture modern art with this film.
Oh, yeah.
The way they use music, the animation style, the storytelling is really first class. And I was surprisingly shocked by that. Because I'm going, oh, no, wow, this is really good across the board, this film. I actually don't think there's a weak link in the story. However, I do agree with you. The most striking one is Tana's story.
I disagree about weak links in the story. And my choice for the weakest link in the story is the framing device of the orb talking to the little girl, because it does not match anything else in the movie. Because it says, I am evil and I destroy every life that I come across. Oh yeah, this captain, he gets away though. He's cool. And oh yeah, the buff John Candy gets the girl, but everybody else's life is ruined. And oh yeah, she kills the bad guys and gets her revenge. But other than that, everybody's life is ruined. That whole bit just to me was, I don't know, it just seemed like it didn't watch the movie that it was talking about. And it just seemed so out of place.
I was going to be one of the pluses that I gave it was the framing of this, because it was an attempt to at least cohesively bring something together that really didn't need to. You could have just gone fade to black, gone to the next segment and kind of tied it together, but I liked it. And I like that voiceover guy. I feel like he used to do trailers at some point too, that guy.
He I don't know who it is. I looked him up and I didn't recognize the name, but I will look that up here in just a second, because I think he needs his due, because he was really good. Say that again?
Really good.
He was.
Yes. I feel like I've heard his voice in trailers, yeah, for sure.
He probably did. I thought it was. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name, but he voiced Frollo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I feel so bad because I don't remember his name.
Oh.
But I thought it was him, but it wasn't. Percy Rodriguez was the voice of Lochnar, and he was uncredited in the movie. Mr. Rodriguez is known for... he was in an episode of Star Trek as Portmaster Stone. I don't know who that is. He was in Mission Impossible and a bunch of other things I've never heard of. But he has over 103 credits. So, I mean, the guy worked, and people liked him. And it's a shame we're not more familiar with him today.
Okay, I'm just going to go off this slight tangent because you just mentioned it. Star Trek. Am I the only one thinking that that was the Enterprise flying
That
past the
was the
screen?
Enterprise, because whenever I was
Yeah.
younger and this movie came out on DVD, I went through every single frame, and sure enough, it's the Connie refit, the motion picture Enterprise, and
Ah,
I don't know how they didn't get sued.
yeah. I don't know either. And it's a really interesting mix, isn't it? Because you've got, some of the best like 70s musical artists doing music for this film. The soundtrack it's stellar.
It is,
Um,
yes. Not
and the
necessarily
other
all
thing,
heavy metal, but still pretty good.
yeah, that's right. It's definitely a mix of styles in there. And then you've got a mix of voice talent. And some of the Canadians' biggest stars at the time, John Candy,
Yes.
Eugene Levy, Harold Ramis, like just to name a few. Joe
Lo-
Flaherty, I think, does the voice
Lots
as
of
well.
SCTV alumni, which I really liked because I enjoyed watching that whenever I was a kid. I also really enjoyed that John Candy was given a role as a very buff warrior, because it was so unlike any other role that he played. And I guess this was before he became super duper famous, and so nobody really knew what he looked like, and he hadn't really been pigeonholed as the fun loving fat guy yet. And it was fun to see him play that kind of role.
And a robot, a rather easily romantically involved robot.
Fully functional in multiple
Fully
techniques,
functional.
yes. I swear they borrowed that for Data. Somebody on the writing staff of the first season of Next Generation who watched Heavy Metal is like, our android's gonna do that too.
No, and so the voice talent's fantastic, and I really like the art style, which is certainly feels very 1970s art style. Seems to be some rotoscoping going on there
Mm-hmm.
too, I think, some elements, and some really beautiful hand animation stuff,
Absolutely.
which is great.
Fun fact for you.
Go on.
Fun fact for you. At the very end, when the house blows up and it switches to a live action model house blowing up,
Yeah.
they were supposed to have rotoscoped that, but they literally ran out of money. And so they couldn't do it. So they just just throw in the model house blowing up.
So the title sequence for this film, I thought, was interesting too. Felt very MTV 1970s, but it's a great way to set the tone for this movie, which is it is, how do you say, it's like a rock opera in some ways too. Is it animated rock opera?
I don't know if you'd call it a rock opera, but it's definitely a movie that you would drop acid and watch.
I think there's that element.
Yeah, most definitely. And they knew what they were doing. This spaceship traveling through space, and you're seeing all that stuff come by. I was just watching that going, yeah, people got high and watched this. I mean, it's super duper obvious.
Some of the stories I loved is it Harry Canyon, the one with the private detective?
Oh, yes.
No,
yes,
the taxi driver.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was really good. Yeah.
That was exceptionally good. It's a real film noir element to it, which I love.
Yeah, and there was some humor in it that I really liked. Whenever they were arresting the alien guy, and he's like, "No, I'm from Earth. I swear, my cousin lives here." And he walks by it, and he's just, "Goddamn illegal aliens." I just thought that was funny. It was funny.
It was funny.
Yeah, that whole sequence was just good. I mean, this whole movie, you can argue this whole movie is exploitative, but it's only because it is. Any chance they got to show a pair of gazungas, they're going to. But
yeah.
I feel like, and I know this is going to sound really weird, I feel that for the Harry Canyon story, it served the plot, because she was basically a succubus who was trying to con everybody at the end. So she was using what she got to get what she wanted.
Yeah. And, some of the nudity, it may be a little bit exploitive, but certainly if we go all the way forward to Tana, that last story, I wouldn't want to have that any other way, because it just showed her. I mean, I don't think there was anything sexual about that scene at all.
No.
It was just her rising like a phoenix, having to swim through that giant pool. I love that scene, by the way, just to throw
I
it out
did
there.
too. And there was
It's one
also
of the best armor up scenes I've ever seen.
yeah. I also have to say that the nudity in the den sequence with John Candy as the big buff guy, I actually think the nudity in that sequence was more satirical than anything else because it was so over the top.
Yeah.
To the point that it almost seemed like out of a South Park episode, which I know South Park did a heavy metal episode and it was amazing.
Yeah.
But mostly I really hate to say this after saying it was exploitative, but the more I think about it, the more I think that the nudity kind of served the purpose of these segments in different ways. So was some of it unnecessary? Oh yeah, most definitely. But some of it worked.
And when if you're going to stay true to the source, because it's based on a magazine, correct?
Yes.
Like that's part of its source. Then the art at the time, what's that? Oh, famous artist, I forget the name of. He's known for doing those very barbarian type of drawings with scantily clad women. His name will pop into my head, but he's a very famous artist. He had done a lot of those covers as well. And yeah, I think you wouldn't be honoring the source material if you didn't kind of do that. It's a movie made for adults. It's an adult fantasy. Yes. And it plays in certain cores, like the one where he becomes the buff guy. What's that called? Den.
Yes.
That's a 10-year-old boy fantasy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Most definitely.
That's what that is. And but one of the ones I like is actually the another segment I had a lot of fun with. It was Captain Stern.
Oh yes,
brilliant. Just love that.
I met Roger Bumpus a few years ago, and he's famous for doing the voice of Squidward from SpongeBob. Yeah. I had no idea that was Hanover Fist. If I'd known that was Hanover Fist, I'd be like, Mr. Bumpus, I love heavy metal. That was so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, SpongeBob, I wasn't in that movie. That was great. Again, I kind of wonder if the people who write Futurama didn't watch this whenever they were younger and modeled Zap Brannigan after Captain Stern.
Yeah. No doubt there's an influence.
Hanover Fist, I have mated with a woman. Alert the crew. Okay, fine.
It feels very much like this movie was made, and I did lament while watching it that I wish I was an adult seeing this in cinemas for the first time. Because I feel very much that this is very cinematically styled. To see this on the big screen with the right audio, I'm sure it was a hell of an experience theatrically.
I'm sure
and I really... Yeah, and I say that as well is because of the tonal shifts in this is really done well. Because, if you don't get that right, it's going to feel awkward if you jump from one tone to the other. So they go from somewhere like Den, like they said, do Captain Stern, and isn't the next one Nowhere Land, I think? The one with the World War II one, which I really
B-17.
Like
It's called B-17. And yes,
B-17 I really like too.
I watched this movie. It came on TBS one night. I must have been about 12 or 13. I'd never heard of this movie before. And I don't know how the heck they got away with putting this on, cable TV, on a public cable TV channel during the late 80s or early 90s. But I watched this and I just remember watching B-17 and just being absolutely terrified of that entire sequence. There's just something, not even before the zombies show up, there's just something about that one pilot making his way through the bomber and just coming across the dead bodies of all of his comrades, and with no musical accompaniment. All you hear is the drone of the engines, and he'll open up one door and you just hear the whistle of the wind as the bodies just lay there. That is such amazing tension building because you don't know what's coming. Something bad is going to happen, but you don't know what. And then the green gumball shows up and it turns into a very terrifying zombie movie. Because where do you go? If there's zombies on a bomber, where do you go?
I thought I'm like, okay, he got away. That's great. Here we go. We'll
Yep.
cut to the next story. No,
No.
that's what my favorite part was. He lands and nope.
Yeah, he lands in the middle of that airplane graveyard. And it's like the worst possible place he could go. And I loved that. And it's so funny because the other day we talked about Predators, the movie with Adrian Brody, and we talked about, oh man, it really sucked that this movie had such a dark ending where, they're not going to get away. And it's so funny how that movie didn't quite make it work, but this one does. Because they actually leave that pilot in a worse situation than they did Adrian Brody and his friends. And here it's just, I don't know, it's satisfying. The whole thing is satisfying.
I think it also where it works how they end it, because you don't actually show them getting killed.
No.
You don't need to.
I think that
cut
there was
right at the most moment knowing that he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think that there was just this tone of just hopelessness throughout the entire segment. Like, you knew that something terrible was going to happen to these two pilots. And I guess the whole idea that was coming, and then at the end it's like, oh, yep, there he goes. Yep, that's the end of him. I guess that was it. And with Predators, you kind of thought, well, they'll get away somehow. And then they don't, and you're just like, okay. Are they planning a sequel? What's going on?
I think they were at the time anyway.
I think they were too.
That anyway.
Yeah, they were.
But it does, I think, with all the great stories in here, So Beautiful, So Dangerous, that's the little robot, John Candy, of course. With the Pentagon, which I did laugh at that moment with her. I love how they start that sequence. This guy with the glasses, very official, walking through the crowd, going into the Pentagon, proudly standing on his feet and saying, there are no aliens when the ship behind you. Like, great. All great stuff. But
John Candy was so funny in that segment. Whenever the thing falls down and breaks, he's, great. How am I, sorry, boss. Sorry me. How am I going to have to put this thing together? It's effed. What am I supposed to do? That makes me laugh.
He has his interlude, and then it starts off, maybe we should start going steady. They cut away from him, cut back to him, and by the time they cut back to him, they're talking about getting married. Yeah. I just love the fact that...
And she's going to get a Jewish wedding. And she deserves it. She deserves it. She was supposed to have dinner at her parents' house.
But really, it's Tana is the centerpiece of this film.
Yes.
And what a way to end the movie, I think, because this is the third act. And it's epic. It's gorgeous. It's so cinematic, it's not funny. It's not even paced fast. It's paced at this very kind of slow to medium pace throughout it. But you're engaged every second of this. I looked at it and I myself went, this could be a feature. You could make this a movie.
It could be.
But I thought about it more. If there's a feature, it's got to be animated. It can't be live action.
I think we're to a point that technologically we could do live action if we wanted to adopt that. The question is, should we? Because she is such a great, multifaceted character. Because you look at this segment and you just think, well, she's just eye candy in a skimpy bikini. But she shows this wonderful emotional range without saying a word. First she is burdened at the very beginning, and you find out later it's because all of her people are gone, and she's the only one left, and so she's burdened with carrying on these traditions. And then she's angry because the people who asked for her help are all wiped out, and she keeps that anger. But near the end, you just see she has this capability of love and empathy when her mount is basically like wounded mortally, and then she just has this wonderful peace about her whenever she's going to finally destroy the Lochnar once and for all. I really think that she is one of the most underrated heroines that the silver screen has ever seen. And again, she does it all without saying a word, but there's so many people there who can't look past the skimpy outfit and the nudity and see that she is an incredible character, and I really wish we could see more. I wish they would make a sequel to Heavy Metal. I think a sequel to Heavy Metal would be awesome. Wait a second, hold on. They did make a sequel to Heavy Metal? What is it? Oh my God! Okay, never mind. Yes, I saw the sequel to Heavy Metal, and it sucked.
I will say on that, I do want to go back to the nudity part. There's no problem talking nudity. I think also, if people are getting offended by the nudity, I think you're missing the point, especially with that segment, because it's what is wrong with admiring the female form? I mean, that's the complexity of her. She's this beautiful, gorgeous, female, perfectly got all the right bits, but she at heart is a warrior, a burden warrior, and she uses what she's got for her own advantage, and not in a nefarious way, but in an honourable way. I mean,
Yes.
she's not sexualizing herself in one iota of this.
No.
It's the fools who try to challenge her. They're the ones. So I think it's more of a comment on maybe some males out there, how they see the female form. But I took it as, that was like, I could see that in a film. If they did that as a live action, that segment, that part of it, I don't think anyone would really care if that was a live action film.
No.
Not in this day. Not in this day and age.
I have to agree. I really don't think that Tana was really... I don't think that it was exploitation. I found it more artistic than anything else. And it was saying something about the fact that she was a warrior, but she was also a woman. And I know that's like eye-rolling to hear. But again, as I said earlier, she is a multifaceted character that shows a wide range of emotions. So she's not just a woman, she's a human being underneath everything. And so
not one to be messed with.
Yeah, I think that her segment does something kind of ingenious, actually, and that is that she goes from being nude at the beginning to armoring up, whereas her character goes from being armored up to nude by the end. Yeah. And I really enjoy that. This segment does not get the praise it deserves. People just see the boobs and they're like, it's all about boobs. It's just boobs, boobs, boobs. No, this is an amazing fantasy with absolutely stunning visuals, great animation, a terrific musical score. The musical score in this sequence is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I loved every bit of it. I did. This is such a great way to end this movie, and it's the centerpiece of the movie, and it should be.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I think, hats off to whoever wrote this segment, because, it avoids some of the traps that were doused in those type of films of that period, those barbarian films. And it avoids all those tropes to do something that's quite unique yet familiar. It's I could see a good CGI. I wondered if someone hadn't played around with doing, animated CGI heavy metal and how that would work. But then again, the women are going to look like they're from Dead or Alive 3, aren't they?
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know. The last time they really tried to do like photorealistic CGI in a semi-serious movie was Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. And everybody talked about how dead everybody looked in that movie. But, I mean, it has been, 15, 20 years since that movie came out? And now we have things like Avatar that have basically what I think solved the dead eye problem. I wouldn't mind it if they tried to do CGI. Because, I mean, let's face it, some of those costumes are not going to stay on.
Yeah. Definitely not. I mean, if you're going to be true to the source, but the only, I think, problem with that now is this a property that lives large anymore? Or is this a property of the past that doesn't have a strong fan base anymore? And I'm sure if anyone out there goes, you're wrong, that's awesome. I would hopefully it still has a strong fan base. Just don't know if it'd have enough to ever do a movie.
Well, I mean, it had a strong enough fan base to do a movie 25 years ago with Heavy Metal 2000, which was hammered butt, by the way. Don't even bother watching that atrocity. But today, I don't know. I think that it still has enough admirers that would watch it, and I think that the originality of it is still quite appealing. I know I found myself enjoying it, and if I was a bad enough parent and showed my children this movie, I think that they would probably enjoy it as well. I think all one has to do is just really watch it, and you see that the quality's there, whether or not you find it dated or, oh, they'd never make this movie nowadays. It's still quality. It's still a quality piece of entertainment, so I stand behind that.
I think, honestly, as a purist, change any things than what you've done. I mean, change the animation style, add CGI would actually be a detriment. They nailed it here. They got it right. And yes, it looks like from the 1970s. How is that a negative? How is that a negative? I have not at all. Not at all.
It's
and
not. Movies like movies like Fritz the Cat and Hey Good Looking and things like that. They had this very distinctive style about them. And heavy metal's in that club, and I wouldn't change it either. Now, an adaptation, sure, do an adaptation, do a live action adaptation of Tana, but yeah, leave this beauty alone.
You know, I usually think that sometimes when people go back and think about nostalgia and they go back and look at older films, they're sometimes disappointed because of pacing. I think that's a key to it. This movie's so slow. I don't remember being this slow. It's a big deal for a lot of people. But going back and watching this, nope. Everything is so meticulous. They knew exactly what they're doing. Any bits that you would consider slow, then you don't get it. Because the times that this film takes, slows down the pace. It ends up being for a very good reason. So if you're afraid about old movies being slow, this is not the film. This is a film that certainly paces itself rather than having 100 cuts in 10 seconds. And I, for one, love it because that's one of the things I love about it.
I think that this movie knows what its strongest segments are. And it starts out with the weakest segments first and then moves up to the best one. The Twilight Zone movie did the same thing. It started out with its weakest segment and it worked its way up all the way to the best one. So yeah, definitely there was some meticulous pacing here. And quite honestly, if you don't like one of the segments, just wait a minute. Except for the last one. Just wait a minute and it'll be over with.
Yeah, again, I liked all the segments, even the ones that maybe weren't my favorite. I still could not, I wasn't picking up my phone. Maybe that's a good way to say it. I was not picking up my phone, even in the segments I didn't love. I wasn't searching anything. I was locked into it. So, and I think even at its worst, there's enough in there to keep you watching.
Most definitely.
And you said, it turns left, right, up, down, like a lot of times in this movie. So I doubt there's 10 minutes in this film without you seeing something fresh on the screen.
Most definitely. You certainly cannot knock this movie for not being original. It has so many original ideas, some of which haven't even been copied, which is kind of strange. Some of them have, but a lot of them haven't. And I don't know, it still seems fresh to me.
Well, considering that always naming a sequel, putting the number 2000 at the end of your movie never works out. Let's just put that out there. We could bury that film as not really existing. Maybe it should never be sequelized, remade, adapted. Maybe this is the artwork that we got and it should just remain in that, and we appreciate that one.
I respectfully disagree. I think that there could be a heavy metal sequel, but it needs to be a product of our time. We should assemble some artists that just have their own distinct styles, and instead of doing just a movie about one thing, which I think was Heavy Metal 2000's worst decision, was just to make the movie about one thing, do the anthology again.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Amazon Prime, get the makers of Secret Level. I don't know if you've seen that anthology series.
Yes.
Give them heavy metal. Let's do a 10-part anthology series. Each segment could be 5-10 minutes. Who cares?
Yeah.
And you release them once a week or whatever. I'm telling you now, that's an idea that may work because I think you need time with something like this.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a mix of so many artists, and from music to comedy to animation that got involved and made this thing work. I think you need to replicate something similar.
Yeah, definitely a sequel or even a sequel series Totally possible. And like I said,
What?
make it original to itself. That way, don't remake anything from the original. Don't do a sequel
Yeah.
to anything in the original. Just do your own
Except
thing.
Tana.
No, she doesn't need a sequel. She dead. She
We
dead,
can
dead,
see
dead ski.
origin stories. With the
No.
two earlier stories.
No, we don't
Hey,
need it.
you're right. You're right.
We
You
don't
don't
need it.
need it.
Nope.
But I mean, I don't think this is ever, as a property, even has a through line of story anyway. So it is made for anthology, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is by design anthology. So rock and roll. Nah,
Absolutely.
I'm glad. I'm so glad you actually said, like, let's watch this, because I probably wouldn't have watched it again. Not because I had any strong feelings about it either way. It's just, yeah. So that was a gift. So thank you. I really enjoyed watching that a couple of hours ago.
Well, we've talked about doing animation on the VHS vault for, gosh, we've been doing the show almost 2 years now, and we've talked about doing animation. So I figured it was about time, and I didn't want to start you out with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs because there's no boobs in it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked that too much. So there is a version out there with them. So I'm just saying. But
we must watch different versions of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Then I'm sure that one's out there, but I have not seen it.
There's a joke there, but I'm not touching it.
Let's just go.
You know what I'm also, I don't know if this is a good segue. You know what I'm really excited about, though, is starting our new franchise next week, Jason. You're talking about epic journeys. This is going to be big. I mean, when we're talking about characters, he's one of the biggest, right?
Absolutely. As iconic as you can get, because we are going to start our next franchise journey next week with Superman the movie, starring the great Christopher Reeve. In my opinion, still the definitive Superman.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about what he does in that movie. I mean, it's been so well reviewed, and there's lots of making of. I think everyone knows this movie backwards, but there are little things that Christopher Reeve does in that movie that's just like so defines the character, not only for the audience at the time, but for every other version of Superman that exists afterwards. I mean,
I will say that Superman the movie has one of my favorite in-camera practical effects that has ever been put to screen. And to the point that I could not figure out how they did it for the longest time. And whenever Corridor Crew came along and revealed how they did it, I just thought, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's so simple. But we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, talk about it next week. That gives everybody a hook, so they'll have to come in next week.
What do we got the week after? I think it's my turn. I don't even have the list up.
Oh, goodness. You know what? If you stall for just a minute, I can tell everybody, because unlike you, I'm prepared.
Because we do Superman, but at the moment, guys, what we are doing is we're kind of swapping out. Jason's picking a movie. I'm picking a movie. But of course, Jason will do this better later on, but we obviously want your guys' contribution as well, because we will sacrifice our movies if a good Patreon out there would like us to do a movie.
Actually, you know what? We are kind of doing that with your pick, because your pick is Stargate. Because you said mean things about Stargate, and that made some people that made some people very upset with you. And so he just said, let's watch Stargate then and just see how that is. Well, so yeah, Stargate.
I will stand by the comment I made there and say that, and I'll get into it more when we do it, the TV series exponentially better.
The TV series is one of the best. I love it.
So, but there you go. Which we've never talked about. Maybe one day we will get into some Stargate. That would be interesting.
That would be kind of fun, because I haven't seen the majority of it, but everything I've seen, I've loved. That one episode where Teal'c and MacGyver are living the same day over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I laughed out loud so many times watching that episode, and I just thought, why am I not watching this show regularly?
That's right. I think it just got caught up in all the other quality that was out around that time as well, I think, for a lot of people. But there you go, guys. That's what we've got coming up in the VHS vault. I'm really excited. I know Jason's really excited. Your support means everything to us. And Jason, how do they support us here at the VHS Vault?
Well, my friends, all you have to do is visit the link in the video description below and journey on over to our Patreon, where you can pledge $5 a week, $5 a month or more to support VHS Jason and I in this very dumb endeavor that we do. You can also become a channel member. Right now, they're currently offline because I screwed something up and I'm waiting to fix it because I can only fix this thing once every month. But it will come back online. If you are a channel member, you're just paused. You will come back when we get it fixed, so please don't abandon ship. And yeah, be sure to join us next week whenever we take to the skies and show you that a man can indeed fly.